Welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a look at the new AutoMocking container that is part of the new version of StructureMap. This is version 2.5. An AutoMocking container is simply an IOC container with a custom facility and dependency resolver that supplies a mocks, in our case a Rhino mock, for any interface that's resolved. Simply put, an AutoMocking container is a tool that will inject mock dependencies into your object for you. I like using an AutoMocking container because I think it reduces the amount of noise and the amount of code that I need in order to create my test, because in a lot of scenarios I don't necessarily need all my dependencies, but I do probably have to create mocks for them, or I have to create stubs for them, and with the AutoMocking container I'll go ahead and do that for me. You also get the added benefit of not having to explicitly create and inject each dependency at test time. The AutoMocking container will do that for you, which means that if your signature changes down the road, you don't have to worry about making changes to your test. So it kind of makes it a little bit more for a more maintainable test. What we have today is I have some code that I'd like to show you, and I'd like to do two things. I'd like to, one, create a test without a mocking container, and then show you the same test with a mocking container. I have this code here, persisting changes, and my persisting pipeline class needs 4 dependencies. And in order to test these, I have to inject various dependencies into these. And my test is very straightforward. What I actually want to do is I want to test to ensure that if an exception is thrown somewhere in the process, that my transaction gets rolled back and does not get committed. So let's go ahead and get started and create some tests. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up. Because I have a lot of code here, I'm actually going to do some copying and pasting. So up here you'll see that I'm creating all my mocks. I'm creating my mocks for my 4 dependencies, and then I'm setting some various expectations. I have an expectation that when I call this method called execute rules, an exception will get thrown, as well as some expectations that things get logged and transaction gets called once and rollback called once and commit never gets called. Then I need to go ahead and create an instance of my object and provide all my dependencies. And I'm going to call persist changes, and I'm just going to provide empty values because I really don't care at this point what the values are. And I just want to make sure that my result comes back. It's not null. And then we're also going to make sure it's not empty string. Because I know that based on my logic that if an exception is thrown, the return value will be a string. And so it should never be a null value and it should never be an empty string. And let's go ahead and put a breakpoint right here. And let's run this bad boy. Still waiting for this thing to load up. Man, taking forever today. There we go. So if I call my persist changes, I should get a result back, and I do. It says do not care what this is. That tells me that all my mocks were used, and if I really wanted to verify that my mocks were actually, my expectations were actually met, I'd want to do something like mock repository.verify all expectations. Could do that. So without using a mocking container, I've got roughly a 20-line method here. And then if I want to, in the future, change the description, or I'm sorry, the signature of my constructor, I'd have to go back to this test and either create a new mock or do something along those lines. It seems like a little bit of work to me. So let's go ahead and create a second test with mocker. And let's go ahead and create, let me create the Rhino AutoMocker. And within StructureMap, you need to actually use the Rhino AutoMocker, and you give it a type of the class that you want to use. In order to actually use Rhino mocks, you actually need to reference the Rhino mocks assembly as well as StructureMap, as well as the StructureMap AutoMocking assembly. Once you have all those set up and ready to go, it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. This line here will create your AutoMocking container wrapped around my persisting pipeline class. And the next thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to just come up here real quick and snag some of these, and we'll make some changes. Now I'm getting a bunch of squigglies here, and that's fine. When you're using the AutoMocking container, I can pull out any of the dependencies by using the get keyword or get method. So I'm going to do a get on the iPersisting rules provider. Let's go ahead and tweak all these to do the same thing. So say now my expectations on a mocking container versus a regular mock is really no different. Instead of just doing mock.expect, I do mockingcontainer.get, and allows me to pull out the dependency from the mocking container. And now in order to run this, all I have to do is do var result. And then I'm going to, instead of calling the method directly, I want to call class under test. This points to my instance of my persisting pipeline that I declared up top. I'll do persist changes, I'll do data set. And again, I don't really care about the actual values here, so I'll just provide zeros. And we want to do an assert that it's not null as well as not empty, just so we can be thorough here. So let's run this bad boy and see what happens. Now I'm about to create my AutoMocker. I hit F5 and see it comes through and does return my correct result, and I can assert that those values are correct. So by using the AutoMocker that's part of StructureMap 2.5, I've now taken my test that was above from give or take 20 lines of code to what, maybe 12 lines of code, because I'm able to remove all this logic here where I just create empty mocks, and I've actually allowed my mocking container to do that for me. And I also don't need to create an instance of my pipeline anymore like I did above, because that's actually done for me with my mocking container. So this is a very brief example of how to use the StructureMap AutoMocker. There'll be more episodes on how to use it in more detail in the future. Hope you learned something today. Until next time.